Okay, there you go. Okay. Yeah. Hi everyone. Thanks for coming out. I'm gonna try to do this. Usually it's Micah, but he couldn't make it tonight, so I'm gonna try to entertain people here and also people online. So everyone online, can you guys hear me?
You got it.
Great, awesome. Thank you for waiting, everyone. My name is Q. I'm with Detroit Youth Tech. We're actually a spin-off of our sister chapter. So some of you guys are from Ann Arbor, so thank you for coming down. We've been doing this since 2010. It's been a long time. And as you know, the pandemic's sort of threw everything off. We're really here to support you guys as entrepreneurs, also people who want to be entrepreneurs, and have a platform which you actually share, cross promote, and so on and so forth. Since our beginning, we've actually grown the group into over 2,000 members. A couple of people you guys might have heard of, probably the biggest one in our event, just come to our events, Doug Song, the guy who did the security. As you know, we got bought out by Cisco or Cisco, whatever. That small amount of money. God, yeah. He's a very humble guy, great guy. He supports us too. So based on Ann Arbor, how they started, we decided to have a great one to Detroit. Because Detroit is at the center of Michigan. It's not to say no other city matters, but me coming back to California 5 years ago, Detroit is somewhere close to the dear to my heart. Actually, I grew up in Detroit right here. So I don't know if you guys can think this, but we grew up on garlic cheese dogs. Not a cheese that was turned orange before it gets to your porch. So that was my life back then. I'm not gonna tell you today, but after I graduated from Eastern Michigan University, I borrowed my mom's name and picked up my sister from Indiana University Law School, drove straight west, and I made it out. And come back here, it's just like a huge change, and I sort of wish that I would have stayed and see the change. And I'm all for the underdog situation. That I know Detroit will come back. You guys help, having you guys support Detroit. I think we would get that. So a couple of housekeeping rules, and not housekeeping rules, but just FYI stuff, is the restrooms are back there. I think I skipped one. And I want to thank a couple of our sponsors, obviously Provider here, without you guys have a space. And then also BELN. They do their patent attorneys specialize in patents and also help you do other legal things. And then we have a new community supporter, 1 million cups. Who here has heard of 1 million cups? No? Wow, really? Yeah, so I think they started out in Kansas, but they help entrepreneurs with the pitch, elevator pitch, and community support. And actually, sometimes it's actually investors. So the idea behind this, the reason why I brought them in is because I wanted to create an ecosystem. I'm not sure if you guys have ever been to San Francisco, but San Francisco has an ecosystem. Like everywhere you go, you bump into a guy's cafe or whatever else. Nasdaq has this huge building. You just go in for free and just talk to multi-millionaires. You would never know, but here I don't think we have a cohesive ecosystem. So 1 million cups have been around for a long time too. They support napkin ideas and just push them. They give you resources too. So they're a community supporter. I'm glad to have them on. We're planning to have other organizations come on to support us in the tech town. So yeah, so I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors. Okay, now the agenda. I don't want to be so repetitive on this, but you guys probably saw the list. This is the order of the entrepreneurs. And guys online, you guys can still see this, correct?
Yep.
Yes, okay. So we have Shel. Is it, and I'm pronouncing it correctly?
You got it, Shel Kimen.
Okay, hold on a second. I think this one is going to cover your screen. So let me just move this down. Okay, so this is the order in which you guys are gonna go. So we have Shel, we have Brittany's here, right? Over there, and then Nico, and then Brian, okay? And I don't wanna, like, again, be repetitive about this, so they can introduce themselves.
when the time comes. But what I'm gonna do now is gonna turn over to Shel. Have you guys heard of design thinking at all? No? What do you know about design thinking? Not to put you on the spot.
I've heard the term, but I could define it for you.
Yeah. Well, Shel is here to explain that. I think the history of design thinking was started in Stanford University. And it's pretty much putting design into the business process. It's a framework in which you can work in a different way to either pivot or move forward. I would say, correct me if I'm wrong too, Shel, it's like the business model in Canvas all together, but with science twist. So it's pretty interesting. So she's leading this at the Detroit Ford. Is it Ford, the company?
Yeah, D Ford at Ford.
D Ford. And is this a new initiative, right?
We've been going for about 2 years now.
2 years. Okay. So what I'll do, I'll let you take it over. Can you try to access the share screen of mine right now? You still have, okay, there you go. Awesome.
All right.
Okay, I'll let you take it away.
You ready? All
Yep.
right. All right, so we're going to start with an apple. And I'd love it if everybody in the room could just kind of close your eyes for just 30 seconds and think of an apple. Okay, someone, it's hard to see who's who, but someone raised their hand.
So yeah, right next to, yeah, that's what I was kind of.
All right, blue shirt. Is it blue shirt in the middle? Yeah, go for it. So Apple, what is it?
$3 trillion software company.
What is it?
$3 trillion software company.
Okay. Someone else? Yeah, go for it.
Doctor away.
What was it?
Said a thing you eat to keep the doctor away.
Okay, all right. Someone else.
It's a fruit.
All right, cool. So it's lots of different things, right? And it depends on who you are and your perspective, whether it's red or a fruit or a childhood memory or a pie or a computer, software company. And that's the value of a prototype, right? Because if there wasn't this sketch that showed the piece of fruit and the computer and the pie, we'd have nothing to talk about, right? We wouldn't know what each other meant when we used the word apple. So prototypes are extremely, extremely important in the world of design thinking. And I imagine as entrepreneurs, you guys are also, and women, you people, are making lots of prototypes as you go along on your journey. It's inexpensive. It's a way to quickly communicate. Sketching is there are many different kinds of prototypes. You know, there's 3D printing, there's models, there's paper prototypes, and there's sketching. And it allows us to test our ideas and fail early, which as entrepreneurs, again, is something you want to do, right? Because the quicker you know if you're headed in the right direction, the quicker you are to a successful product. So everything in this presentation is a prototype. right? Everything, almost everything I do in my life is a prototype. So, hi, I'm Shel, and I co-lead design thinking at Ford. And so we're responsible for taking the approach, the methods, the tools of design thinking, some of which I'll talk about today, and spreading it to the 180,000 people that work at Ford. I'm a creative problem solver, and I've solved lots of different kinds of problems. I was also an entrepreneur for a social benefit company, hotel slash nonprofit. I've done community organizing. I've done art. I'm playing right now with concepts around imagination. And I'm also working for Ford. Some of these brands at the bottom are companies that I've worked for or with. So I've done a lot of different things, but it's always been creative problem solving. So when we talk about design, what we really mean in its most simplest form is defining it as solving a problem. And I'm going to play a little video here. Let's see if it works. All right. It'll start in just a moment. Bruce Mao is a famous graphic designer.
Are we happy with accidental, or do we want specific outcomes? Is it accidental or design? And it really bifurcates. It's either we want specific outcomes, and therefore we are designing those outcomes, or we take what comes. We're happy with random, and we're, accidental is fine. Almost always, we want specific outcomes. And the moment that you want specific outcomes, you're a designer. And when you say, look, I have a destination, I have a vision, I have a goal, I have a purpose, I want something to happen. The moment you say that, you've become a designer. And now you need a methodology to envision that destination, envision the future, and systematically execute the vision.
So things either happen by accident or by design. Very wise man, and I don't know how you can't fall in love with him looking at this picture. I think he's great. So our approach is designing for people, but more importantly, with people. Right? We don't want to create something that is just for someone. We want to create things that are with the people, that we often call stakeholders. And to be truly human-centered, we need to be inclusive of all design for all humans. So going back to design thinking is an approach to creative problem solving, complex, open-ended problems. So when you have a problem and there's not just one answer, like it could have a number of different answers or a number of different ways to get to a solution or set of solutions, that's when design thinking is appropriate. There's lots of engineering platforms and systems and tools that one might use if they want to deduce their way to a single answer. If you were to Google human-centered design or design thinking, you would see a lot of different models, including the one that Q mentioned that's from Stanford. That's this hexagon one up here. They've evolved it a little bit since then, but that's more or less what Stanford's using right now. There's overlapping circles. There's double diamonds that are diverging and converging. There's overly complex wheels. There's a lot of different ways to look at this, but they all essentially say the same thing, right? Which is learn something about people and context. Imagine something, which is new possibilities. This is where you're brainstorming or ideating. And then build something and evaluate your ideas quickly and do it over and over and over again. And you don't have to start at learn. You could start at build, or you could start at imagine. You could start with a hypothesis and make something, and then go put it out in the world and learn to see if it's valuable. So it's both iterative and not prescriptive in terms of how you use it. And anybody that tells you that it's a series of steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hasn't been doing it for very long. I've been doing it for about 20, 25 years. When we talk about design thinking, there are 5 principles that we're using. These aren't the only 5 principles, but these are the ones that make up our point of view. One is design everything, and that goes back to things either happen by accident or by design. So you are a designer. If you want specific outcomes, it must be designed. Start with questions. Lead with questions, not solutions. Exploring possibility leads you to solutions that you wouldn't have dreamed otherwise, right? We often say fall in love with the problem, not the solution. Understand people. You, me, all of us, we are biased. And if we want to understand the people that we're designing for, we should be designing with them. We certainly need to talk to them and observe them, right? Because otherwise we're not going to understand what's going on in their environment, their context, the things that they need. Create to think. Sometimes we call this make to think. We prototype to experiment and learn. And what we learn will shape our next steps, whether we're going to move forward, pivot, or abandon it or start over. And then lastly is diversify your lens. So it's a team sport, and you need different perspectives for different solutions. The more diversity you can have in the room when you're playing with these tools and these ideas, the better your solution's going to be. They guide our behaviors and they help us develop innovative solutions. So some examples. Just after COVID broke big in the United States, and in this case in March of, I guess, was it 2020? I can't even remember. It's been a while. But right after Ford sent us home from work, a group of people got together and started to prototype because they wanted to help. And what they ended up doing was creating really fast ways to make surgical shields for emergency medical workers because there was a great shortage of these shields. And through rapid prototyping and many different people from all over the company playing together, we were able to ship out 20 shields, then work with some doctors and some EMS people and make another 50 or 100, then 1,000. And because we're Ford and we know how to scale things, we shipped over 20 million of these shields. And it all started with a prototype. Another product that was a result of prototyping and iteration and design thinking process or approach was the Ford Maverick, which is a small pickup truck just launched. It's less than $20,000, and it's designed for young people that have active lives. And, you know, we went out and we watched people, right? And some of the people we watched happened to be people that were in bands. And, you know, young people that are in bands don't necessarily have a lot of money, but they do have a need for a pickup truck. And by watching people and what they really do and talking to them, we were able to design a truck that is flying off the shelves like hotcakes, which is pretty exciting. Another example is the F-150 Lightning, which is the first full-size electric pickup truck. One of the things that we saw when we were out in the field is in the upper left, people were working in their trucks. They had laptops hanging out on their steering wheels. They were eating lunch with bags and boxes kind of all over the place. And they were even taking naps. And what you can see on the right is just some sketching of maybe a different way to design the center console. You'll notice that little shifter in the middle of the animated image is folding down so a tray table can come out. The reason that's important is that pickup truck drivers like the shifter, they don't like the knob, right? And so we had to come up with a way to both have the shifter and make it go away so that there could be a table for a laptop or for food. Another thing we noticed is that universally, everybody we talked to slept in their truck. Whether they were taking a nap at work, camping, or hiding from the family, just trying to get some quiet time. And why don't we have lie flat seats in trucks? And so we did a number of different prototypes. In fact, we did hundreds of prototypes, starting with sketches, going all the way through to CAD images, and ultimately physical prototypes to make this seat that lies flat and is now available. So I guess the question for you all as you're designing and creating businesses and products for the market is, how can design thinking show up in the work that you do? And that's it. That's what I've got. So thank you.
So Shel, do you have time for some questions?
I absolutely do.
Anyone have questions?
I have a question.
All right, Brian.
Do you have any tips for how to do interviews with customers? Get like an unbiased kind of perspective from them?
I heard tips for customers. Q, could you repeat the
Oh.
question?
Do you have any ideas how to interview customers?
Yeah, I mean, first you have to find them. There's actually a great book called Interviewing Users by a guy called Steve Portigal. It's super fast read. You can read it in, an hour or two. And it has lots of tips for interviewing. How you ask questions that aren't biased, tips for listening. One of the biggest mistakes that I've certainly made and that many people make is trying to fill dead space, silence, with words, right? Because it's in that silence, if you give people enough time and you can suffer through that awkward silence of, I've asked a question and nothing's happening, people will eventually start to talk. Another thing is to ask people to tell you a story, and a real story. So when is the last time you did X? Or when was the first time you did Y? Because if they can tell you a real story, then you can, get real examples. Now, if you're trying to make something in the future, right, something that hasn't been invented yet, and people can't tell you their experience with it, and they'll say, if you say, oh, do you want X? They'll say, of course, yeah, I want it, I want X, Y, and Z. But in that case, you probably aren't going to be interviewing them. If you are, you're going to be asking them to imagine a future scenario. And you're going to create some scenarios for them to imagine. And you're going to find yourself in a space of co-creation. And that's what we talk about when we talk about designing with people. We do a lot of co-creation. So yeah, those are some tips.
How are those decisions made to say, two examples, so they will increase the cost of construction? How are the decisions made to decide how much cost do we put into certain improvements and to how much of a reward will we try to get back? How are those decisions sort of made that trade off the increased cost or doing things differently versus the payoff of benefit?
I think I'm hearing about trade-off decisions.
Yeah, the trade-off decision. So with the shifting gear, would that be an example you're asking? Or
Yeah.
like the sweeping along that area with the
Yeah. So I mean, it's only going to benefit a certain number of users, and then it's going to be increased cost compared to what it's done before. Sort of in general, how are those trade-offs sort of made?
Yeah, how would you prioritize it? It's probably cost benefit, right? And you probably have a internal analyst who does that.
There's a number of different things that happen. At its simplest, yeah, there's some equations. There's lots of spreadsheets. And if I'm honest, sometimes those spreadsheets and those trade-offs aren't that useful. Just being really transparent. But in the case of the shifter, we actually created, we call them bucks, which is a prototype of a vehicle. And in this case, it was just made out of foam core and, a few 2x4s and metal rods. And what we did is we had a number of different features in the vehicle. And we asked people like, okay, you can have 3 things. Out of all of these things that we're looking at, what are the 3 things that are most important to you? And, it's not in the early stages like that, it's very qualitative, right? You only need to talk to 5 to 10 people. Once you start hearing the same thing 4 or 5 times, you can pretty much assume that it's going to keep happening. The further down the pipe you get, the closer you get to your real product, that's when you start getting into things like market acceptance testing and the real quant, which is, yeah, measuring your ROI, right? Are people, and willingness to pay is another one. Are people willing to pay extra money so that they can have this shifter? And will they accept that something else is going to, come out of the vehicle in exchange for it? So, it's sort of like a funnel. It starts off very low fidelity and very qualitative. And as it goes on, it becomes more and more quantitative and more high fidelity.
Any more questions? Nico? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, scroll back.
Hi. That's weird. Hi. So say like I'm trying to talk to the customer. A lot of times what happens is like they'll think I'm trying to pitch them, and it's like I'm not trying to pitch you. Like, why don't we just come up with a solution that helps you out? It's like how I find that transition is hard. Have you ever run into this? Expect to pitch them.
All right, so I think the question was around you're talking to users and they think you're trying to sell them something, and it's difficult to get their sort of real feelings about whatever it is that you're talking about. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Yeah. In our case, they know we're trying to sell them something. But in other scenarios or other companies I've worked at or other projects I've worked on, that is a very real situation. And on some level, you are trying to sell them something, right? You just don't know what it is yet. And what you want to do is build a rapport with that person that you're talking to so that they understand what you're really after. I'm trying to build a product that solves, this need in the world. And I'm not really sure if this thing I've got here is actually going to be helpful. Would you mind taking it home, for a week and playing with it or using it and letting me know what you think? And so giving them a little bit of space and time to take the thing away, and then doing what's called maybe a diary study. And that could be done with video, or people could write down their experiences using the product. But giving them that space to play with it without you around is one way to do it. But I think being honest and just letting them know what it is that you're really after, and sometimes even just telling them your bias. My hypothesis is X. What do you think about that? Does it make sense? Another way you can do it. I'm not a big fan of surveys, but you can use them. And you can use them to help you figure out where to kind of dig deeper, right? So a survey is another way that you can get people to be a little more honest in their feedback, especially if you're asking open-ended questions. So things where people can write down their answers. And the storytelling is the last one, getting people to tell stories. People love to talk about themselves. And if you can get them talking about themselves in context of whatever it is that you're trying to make. And, it's obviously going to be different if you're, trying to develop a food product versus, a medical device, right? You're going to be talking to very different people and asking them very different questions. And, in the case of a medical device, they're probably not going to be taking it home and experimenting with it, right? And they're probably not even going to be experimenting on real people with it. And so you're going to have to find a surrogate. So another thing we do is analogous research. So for example, when I think it was IDEO was I forget what their actual problem was that they were trying to solve for, but they wanted to understand the high pressure dynamics of an emergency room situation. And they just couldn't like hang out in the emergency room. Like it's just not possible. But what they did instead is went to, I forget if it was NASCAR or Formula One. I think it was a NASCAR race, and they studied a pit crew, because a pit crew is also in a really fast-paced, high-pressure situation. And that was something that they could observe, and then they could extract analogous insights that they could apply to the emergency room. So that's another way you can study something without having to, interact with people, especially in a case where either you're worried about people are thinking you're trying to sell them something, or you just literally can't observe them in action, because of regulations.
NASCAR example is super interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Any more questions? All right. I have a final question for you. So you showed Apple in the beginning.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering, did you think Steve Jobs cares what a customer wants? Because he's more of a futurist, right? Versus you think about Jeff Bezos, Amazon, he's more customer centric. Do you think either one of them use that kind of design thinking process?
It's interesting because, a lot of people cite Apple when they talk about design thinking and human-centered design and say, Apple doesn't talk to people. They just design great products. One, I know people that work at Apple, and that's not true. But two, if you watch the movie about Steve Jobs, and at the end there's this scene where his daughter pulls out her Walkman out of her pocket, and he has the insight, you should be able to have 1,000 songs in your pocket. Why do you only have 8 or 10? That was something he observed, right? That's part of human-centered design. That's part of design thinking, observation. And he didn't just, wake up one morning and say, I'm going to make an iPod. He discovered an insight by watching the behavior of a real human being, and then in this case, his daughter. So that's that's sort of my answer to the Apple and human-centered design. I do think that Amazon is more rigorously and constantly testing ideas and doing beta tests all the time, right? I mean, every time you order a product, you're probably beta testing something that you don't know about. So there definitely is a difference. But I wouldn't go so far to say that Apple doesn't use design thinking or human-centered design.
Fair enough. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next speaker. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm excited to see.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Shel. All right, Brittany, you're next. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is probably stand over here, and then you can stand over there because I'm gonna try to toggle for you. Is that okay?
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So then, yeah. Then. Let's see if it's not going to share it. Give me a second, guys. So keep online. Can you guys see that? Yes?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay.
Well, thank you too for having me, and thanks everyone. So my name is Brittany Mitchell-Kelley, and I am the president and co-founder of CHEMpreneurIST. Before I get into the heart of what we do, I'm just going to give you guys a little background on how we started, just for context. So I am an educator for over a decade now, and my other co-founder, Cass Fry, is a chemist. So what happened was, as I was teaching, and so I taught in elementary schools, I taught in after school programs at high schools. And what I've noticed is a lot of times students wouldn't have equal opportunity for STEAM or the science, technology, engineering, entrepreneurship, arts, and mathematics experiences, or get to meet someone that could possibly be a mentor, talk about their careers. Because a lot of times I was told, by January, we need to focus on the M step. So if you guys are fellow Michiganders, we took MEAT back in the day, now it's called the M step. And so, a lot of funding can go into that. So, a lot of districts were really focused on switching gears just for the M step to focus on mathematics and English. So a lot of subjects like science and arts and things like that got pushed to the wayside. So I would bring my friend Cass, who's a chemist, and other STEAM professionals into my classroom so they could experiment with the kids and just talk about their careers in general. So how Cass and I started Detroit CHEMpreneurIST is in 2016, I went back and got my master's in social work, so I'm also a social worker, and I focused in entrepreneurship, economic, and community development. And so in 2020, I graduated with my MSW, and Cass left their position and focused on becoming an entrepreneur themselves. So we decided, hey, let's bring this to life. So Detroit CHEMpreneurIST is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And so next slide. And so our mission is to provide students of all backgrounds inclusive, safe space to excel in STEAM. So that science, technology, entrepreneurship, engineering, arts, and mathematics, while collaborating about personal care chemistry and entrepreneurship. And so it's our vision to provide a holistic program that gives students the opportunity to explore their passions in the STEAM field and hopefully increase and diversify these fields. And our hope is that we can essentially create opportunities for rural and small minority small business owners to boost the local economy. Next slide. So what is personal care chemistry? So personal care chemistry is basically the hygiene products that you use every single day and the science behind it. So we walk students through the scientific method and we take them from concept to manufacturing. And so they get the opportunity to experiment and explore, hypothesize, and make observations. And then we help them take those experiments and essentially develop their own products. And so on the next slide, I just have some examples of the things that we teach with students in our classes. So this is a lesson overview on the things that they learn in personal care chemistry. So they get to explore a hygiene product, they're introduced to the industry. Then they can make a body scrub, we teach them how to make bath bombs. And like all this, they're not just making these things, but they're getting the science behind it too. So this is just an example, like we can offer right now up to 8 lessons, but like we're really dynamic. So a lot of organizations that we work with, some, can want to do like 6 lessons. So we like basically cater to different organizations that we work with. Next slide. So the other side of that is the entrepreneurship side. And so we take what students are learning in personal care chemistry and we apply them to entrepreneurship. And it doesn't have to be, maybe a student doesn't want to be a chemist or doesn't want to develop, their own product. We really encourage them in entrepreneurship to explore their own passion. So in the entrepreneurship side, they can take what they're learning in personal care chemistry and apply it, or they can come up with their own unique idea. And we really encourage them looking critically and becoming problem solvers in their own communities to solve, like our presenter earlier was saying, the design thinking process. So they're using empathy, they're defining a problem, they're creating a prototype, and they're testing. So next slide. The overview of the entrepreneurship lessons is they're getting an introduction to entrepreneurship, and then we start digging deeper. So a lot of our lessons, the more an organization signs up for, the more comprehensive the material is. So they're taking these ideas, either it's a product that they develop from personal care chemistry, like I said, or their own idea, and we're going through from visual ideation, so looking at their community, thinking about different personas of people that could possibly use their product or service, then using an opportunity analysis around that idea of their community. You're developing prototypes. We help them develop their own market research. So we teach them about focus groups and surveys. And then we do a brief introduction to web design and social marketing, and then we teach them about the business model canvas around their idea, and then how to pitch. So we are currently participating with schools, we're participating with other organizations, but if you know anybody that would be interested in our services, that's one way that you can help engage with us. We also have our own market research. So on our link tree, that's like our hub for everything. We have our website, social media, our own market research surveys, or if you know resources that could possibly fund our efforts. Like I said, we're a nonprofit organization, so it's really competitive, or just spreading the word. So we're sharing our social media, our link tree. That's all helpful. So that's all I have. Question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is this something you're focusing on Detroit, or you want the national, or?
Yeah, great question. So when we first, so the background, as an educator, I have been in Detroit. Only other place outside of Detroit was eCourse, which was like on the border of Detroit. So when we first developed Detroit Compreneurs, we really focused on Detroit. But as we started pitching, it got bigger. So we were talking with representatives from all over Michigan. And you know, we do hybrid programs. So we do in person, we've done virtual, we've done the hybrid in person and virtual. So we kind of do everything. So we've even had people like interested in other states participating in our program. So, thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you're working with kids, and if they are the inventive type, how do you guys do the IP? Is there any IP associated? Is it their product that they develop it, or you
Yeah.
go through some kind of?
So it is their product. They do develop it. We are, it is mostly an introduction. So they are developing their own products. We're teaching them the basic skills to get to that point. The other, if on the first page, we have 2 other board members. One is our director of outreach. So he connects us with different organizations, with schools to partner. And then we also have a director of curriculum who is also a fellow social worker and a secondary educator. So we are currently trying to expand our curriculum to make it, as I stated, Cass is a chemist and also an entrepreneur. So their own business, they help small businesses develop their own personal care products. So that's something that we're looking into because we want the kids to have the opportunity to, you know, sell this in the market, but there's a lot that goes into it, like the FDA regulations and that. So we're working on expanding it, so that's a possibility.
Yeah, I think there's a huge community of, you guys have been to the Eastern market. There's a lot of people who create their own vegan products, like healthcare kind of creams. So one of the famous guys, he's a singer, is KEM. His grandmother is literally down the street here. She makes it in her kitchen. She sells at the Eastern market. So it's just fascinating that you guys came up with this concept. I mean, this is great. Yeah. Any other questions? Comments? No? All right. Thank you so much, Brittany. Next presenter is Nico. Okay, you guys want to take a minute break here? You want to stretch and all that? Did we miss somebody? Somebody left? So sad. How you guys doing? Good? I'm actually also so my 9 to 5 now. And we had to go back in 2001. Both parents were not comfortable, so they're all online. There's 1 or 2 kids at the university. Sorry, but it's so hard. Talking back and forth. I feel like I'm back in sinking. So we're waiting. We just go around.
I'm currently working in the department, but I think start working on it. So I want to I really want to make something like a resource for people to find out what other people do, like for a job, for careers. There's purpose.
Sorry, my law. It's a platform. Job market. This way, it's a
Can you like really find out
actually also does it. All the different people are there. They're
It's also used. In fact, so they actually, she goes to the companies, it's like glass door. It's all posted, so you see if it's something that's good. You get it, has it. All right, so you want to talk about yourself? Like that? You guys together? No. Just go around. I'm Josh. Josh, what do you?
Oh,
what do you do?
sorry. I'm a software engineer.
Sorry, as far as business wise.
Nothing right off the top of my head, but yeah, just the business I started at 14. Do a few things. I'm an entrepreneur, educational services, a nonprofit, blockchain, education. Invested.
Just getting into the software field.
Software engineer or is this?
Yeah, software engineer, yeah. Just starting, so.
How do you work with?
None.
No, you own.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you should check out.
Also,
Muse. Oh, okay, awesome. Well, welcome everyone. All right, Nico, you are up. So you can stand that side. I can do it for you, just like I was doing it for Brittany. Then share the screen. Nico. Okay, all right, not a problem. So, ready? 3, 2, 1, you're up.
So, hey, yeah, Nico, we were talking about brands enter the digital domain. So, kind of this principle that we're fixing around is that brands want to get into NFTs, and well, they want to digitize their offerings. There's a few reasons they might want to do this. First and foremost, foster communities and engage with your customers. Also have recurring revenue streams. If you sell NFTs in the secondary market, get a cut of that. And they're kind of hype right now. They're used a lot. So yeah, it's like a capitalize on that stuff too. And we do have some market use. So aside from all the headlines, brands get NFTs. So regular NFTs have some problems. So, when it comes to existing brands, firstly, like there's a lot of regulatory questions in people's minds about selling basically tokens to people. A lot of people don't see the value in tangible products like selling a JPEG. So people think it's dumb that you make money for that. Also, crypto has a huge knowledge entry. I'm sure, like they're especially setting up a wallet, it's pretty hard, and like getting to know the window, and yeah, so there's also the question of like whether this NFT is a money grab, like McDonald's like rib NFT, which just doesn't feel like it fits in their brand, but it is what it is. So we plan to solve all these problems by linking physical products to NFTs or vice versa. And yeah, so in more specifically, our solution is a physical NFT wallet. It's our core product, and the way it works is that you have either QR codes or these Verilink tags which the tags have a lot more interesting properties than the QR codes. But the wallet is just an app, and you're able to scan these tags with QR codes, and it associates it with the NFT in the blockchain to make sure that the physical item is legit, and then it gives up a digital experience. And you can claim the NFT from the item, and you get exclusive access to things like in-person events, live streams, and more that holders of the NFT have. So we try to be user friendly. It's also tangible experience problem, and brands end up selling their physical item, not the NFT. So the regulatory concerns kind of concern. So here's some examples of brands we've worked with and stuff we've done. So like there's this rum company that they're creating an NFT, and it's going to give their holders access to exclusive tasting events and merch, and other digital perks that are possible. This domain are additional NFT drops, and maybe, for example, access to very quick selling barrels here in Distillery. So yeah, we that like digital rendering, created that. It's part of the digital experience that you have from it. We think this is also good for fashion. Smart tags can be embedded in clothing. The smart tags are unforgeable, so they create a secure digital world. And the interesting thing here is you can have a paradigm shift where with traditional fashion, you buy traditional and traditional object, expecting to depreciate this time. We think we can make this object appreciate. And so brands can probably charge a pretty high premium for this property. With fashion, there's all sorts of perks you can offer, similar to liquor, in-person events, in-demand product drops. It's a lot of fashion things, a lot of So we think it's better to give than take, so instead of stealing attention, you can also run marketing campaigns, like for example, have a flyer that you kind of people have AR experience, but this flyer is kind of trophy horse, so to speak, where you give the customer something that is of value, this kind of this limited experience, and they engage with your brand. And also super cool for collectibles. Here's another Magic Johnson trading card. And cool thing with collectibles is a lot of people have big expansive collections. They can't be taken with them on the go. So you can leave your collection at home, flex their collection digitally. Not going to make money. So our core product is an app, but we do offer services for brands to actually digitize their offerings. So we charge fixed costs for their smart tag. We also offer creative services for some. We also plan to monetize more in-app interactions, like buying items. So everyone and their moms trying to intend these days. Let's set this apart. Well, first of all, we have this physical linking tech that solves all those problems that we talked about earlier. I think our wallet offers the simplest experience overall. We actually have some patent pending on some of the technologies we have to facilitate this. The authentication system, so it's the smart tags people, it's truly decentralized, so it's really hard to hack. There's no central point of failure, and we operate this difficult experience. So yeah, why am I here? I guess I like meeting people in the space. So in any space in entrepreneurship. So happy to talk to people interested in what big stuff. I guess more concretely, we are seeking clients, especially in the fashion collectibles industries. Collectibles is include anything like sports cards, vinyls, figurines, jerseys. And also we're open to talking to people who could be distribution partners. So if you interact with fashion, with brands, artists, yeah, we should talk.
You said that the NFTs may appreciate over time, but then it's hooked up with digital object, T-shirt, whatever. How's that, like the NFT, the T-shirt you throw away, do you keep the NFT kind of thing, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's one option. You could for lower value items, you could just like throw away the physical side NFT. Maybe that gives you purpose, and that in itself has value. So that's one option. Another option is you can keep the physical around, and you can. The digital can evolve over time. Like the brand can continue to add to it and add interactions to it. So the item, even though the physical is staying the same, the digital can upgrade it, kind of like when Tesla's self-driving. It gets updated. You know?
Yeah. It's not updated.
Yeah.
Or better.
Yeah, exactly. Or if it works, that's
Other questions? Do you have any other?
The Lincoln Technology Park, how is that different from like the chain?
teaching.
Yeah, they do like Lincoln Technology, similar to the line and all that.
So each chain. Could you give a quick primer on that?
Yeah, they deal more with them. They're in Asia. They don't do not the full spectrum that I've seen. So specifically the linking like authenticate line to trap this supply chain.
Yeah, I have to look into this, done some more, and so I can't give you a full answer, but we aren't focused on supply chain stuff. We think that's kind of we think the place where we shine is more consumer driven. And actually the authenticity value prop, since you mentioned the authenticity of the client, when we started out, that was a big part of it. It's kind of become more kind of pushed to the background now. Now it's more centered around digital experiences we create, and a bunch of other stuff that facilitate experience. So yeah, our focus is more on that stuff instead of authentication of the supply chain.
Yeah, I got a question. Like about stuff like the T-shirt or like the cards or like anything that what's the process on the user side of like getting an NFT?
This is where our patent makers around technology. And basically, the idea is you can get the item and claim the NFT.
How does it work? Like you have that app, and then you just scan it, and it just works.
Yeah.
It's like it's like a wallet or
Yeah, we are. We have you as well.
the Verilink app.
Yeah.
Is the wallet.
Did you have a slide for that one that was showing them?
Slide. The very first one has. Oh, sorry, the first like demo thing. So next one more demo. This one. Yeah, so you can see the.
Oh, so this is actually your, there it is, yes.
Oh, I think that's the phone screen. Yeah.
That's awesome. Wow.
Are you what's your chain agnostic or
So we support DNT compatible chains. So yeah, right now we support Polygon, Ethereum, but as you really easy to jump to other things that it's at the moment. So, in a constant.
Cool. Any other questions? Does anyone online have questions? I don't see your faces, so probably not there. Okay, great. Thank you, Nico. Last but not least, Ryan. Okay, let's see how to do this. Yeah, I wonder if I can. This is a PDF, right? So let me try this. Because if I go PDF mode, it will be a wider screen for you. Okay. This way. Yeah. Not a good idea. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Brian, and I am the technical co-founder at Red Medical. And our product is self-writing medical notes for physicians, powered by our. So a little bit about myself. I've worked at several startup companies. Most recently, I worked at a startup for this one called Verilink, where we built genomics computing. That company was acquired by NVIDIA in 2019. Before that, I was a engineer at a company called CHEMpreneurIST, where I joined the group from 0 to 50 full-time employees, with about 30 million in venture capital. I built their flagship product with another guy, now used by greater than 50% of the top insurance companies. And my co-founder is a medical doctor. He also has an MBA, a master's in public health, and a master's in science. He served in senior executive roles at several large health systems. Most recently, he's chief medical officer of a multi-billion-dollar health system called Advent Health. And he also held medical director roles at two companies, at two hospital systems. And more recently, he's ventured into working startup companies. So prior to Red Medical, he was in the C-suite of a company called Dun, which also has been pretty successful. The problem that we're working on is that primary care physicians spend about 2 to 4 hours a day producing documents called clinical notes. Basically, whenever you go to the doctor and you have like an interview with them, you do physical exams, you have to document all of that, and the document is basically like a memo that usually runs like 1 to 3 pages long. This problem affects about 300,000 primary care providers in the United States, and that number is expected to grow pretty rapidly over the next 10 years. The impact that it has on doctors is that they're constantly very paperwork. When doctors have to spend 2 to 4 hours a day for documentation, it really detracts from their personal lives.
I'm so sorry.
And it also costs health systems a great deal of money. Doctors' time in the primary care industry is worth about $150 an hour on average. And that's just salary. That's not counting the revenue they bring to the health system. So if you base it on dollars, if you base it on revenue, then it's as much as $5,000 a day for the hospital. Another problem is that
I'm sorry. There you go.
since doctors are primarily concerned with treating patients, we're gonna like document things in a way that allows the health system to get reimbursed. So like if you get the doctor and the doctor writes no, then the plan is over that. If they don't write no, then the plan can't go for it. And the other people who are affected by this, that from doctors that are extracting paperwork, you know, work, and anxious, hurry, that's much more likely that they're going to get so our solution to this problem is a conversational AI system. We have a demo on our website, which probably explains it a little better than I can verbally. But basically the way it works is we just audio of the conversation and documentation and that patient counter. And then we automatically extract the medical information from the doctor's note. And we also capture data from the so the practice. So traction, we tested our product on this point like over 20 medical doctors, and we are currently fundraising. Our goal is to secure an enterprise contract in 60 days to actually get funds. And our first customer will be somebody who my co-founders worked with in the past, really well, like just about 15 other enterprise prospects. And we also have some interest outside of our target market, which include the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, the American Medical Association, and some other potential contracts.
Next slide.
Yeah, next slide. So our business model is that we're an enterprise sales company. So sales cycles take a long time, usually between 6 and 9 months in this industry. The first 2 months usually involve just kind of like engagement, discussions with C-level or senior healthcare executives. And the second stage is that we move forward to a pilot, which they generally will pay for, somewhere in the 6-figure range, so over $100,000. And then we'll engage in 3 to 4 month pilot to prove that the technology works the way that they want it to. And about 3 to 4 months after that, we need to close a recurring deal with the customer for a 7-figure contract, using $1.5 million to close this. Some of these healthcare systems are very large, so once we get in with the customer, we can potentially grow it to hundreds of thousands of seats, and eventually grow it to into the 8-figure and $1 million contract. This slide's not very good, so I'll try to explain it. So basically, there are kind of like 2 dimensions that really matter to healthcare systems. The first is the experience of the physician. Like how good is this for the doctor to use? And that really comes down to like the time savings and like how much of the note taking we automate. So the existing solution in the industry that's used most commonly is actually to hire a human being to follow the doctor. Or I should say, actually, the most common solution is that the doctor writes the notes themselves. It's kind of down here. It's like the worst case scenario. Bad for the doctor, bad for the health system too. Increasingly, companies are starting to hire medical scribes or human beings to follow doctors with every patient counter, but it's really expensive. And it also has problems with staffing and turnover. Anyone who's worked on a team before knows that introducing an additional person onto the team creates complications. So our solution is designed to basically reproduce that experience of having a human medical scribe in the room, but without the human being. The other dimension that's important is that we, this should actually be like, instead of high cost and low cost, it should be like low ROI and high ROI, basically like how economically profitable is this for the health system to invest in it. So what we do to increase the health system's ROI is that we capture all the medical data that occurs here in the patient counter, and then we ensure that the health system can actually bill for that. We can do the next slide. Yeah, and I would say our main advantages are first the technology. So there's only one other company on the market that can really compete with what we're doing. And our main advantage over them is that they don't capture the data that you're doing, whereas we do. And yeah, we're also real time. We're near real time. We have like a 20 to 60 second lag on the note. Whereas our closest competitor is like another difference is that we're specialized, so we focus on primary care doctors, and we're really the only company in the space that has this specific medical specialty that we focus on. And we also have a pretty experienced team. Dr. Brittany, a lot of experience with value-based care, and we've run successful value-based care programs for health systems. So those are some of the things that we bring to the table. So our goal for this year, hopefully it'll be a really exciting year, is to close the pilot this summer for at least 5 to 10 seats with an enterprise customer and charge them $100,000 for that. We'll hopefully be operating at like 50% gross profit point. And by the end of the year, our goal is to exceed our cash flow break-even point and close about 100 seats at a gross profit of about 70%. So that would put us at about 1.2 million a year. And we charge by the number of seats. So for every physician, we charge $1,000 a month. So basically, like 100 physicians would be $100,000 a month, $1.2 million a year. And yeah, we're raising a pre-seed round right now. I don't know if there are any people in the audience, so I won't push that too much. But yeah, I'm definitely interested in connecting with any software people, healthcare people, other startup people. And that's it.
Question. Just in terms of like tangible, so the patient's experience, you basically just sign a waiver saying it's okay to use, and then it's like an app or it's a device in the room, and then from patient's viewpoint, nothing.
So actually, no waiver required except in 11 states. So in 11 states, in order to record a conversation between two people, you have to have like notification. It's like when you call into a call center.
They say that,
And
yeah.
they say like, this is being recorded for my purposes. Yeah, we have to have like a statement on that. So when our app starts recording a conversation, recording one of those 11 states, then we'll have to provide that notification.
Other than that, it's totally seamless in the patient's experience.
Yeah, and we do a lot of things to protect patient privacy. Like oftentimes this type of work is done by remote medical scribes, which is not really having privacy. They see and hear everything. Like there are even companies now that are taking like video cameras and what we do is we actually take steps to like anonymize that data the second it hits our system. So nobody will really, in most cases, there's no possibility that someone processes the data by what patient wants to.
Does this integrate into any of their existing systems?
Yes, it does. The exact type of integration depends on how the enterprise customer wants to do it, how the system is set up. But our system is designed to be able to pull data from our systems.
The automated, that's something that you guys, service you guys do.
It's kind of on a case-by-case basis. So probably for each enterprise customer, we may have to build integration.
The question. So, is this all going to like a central hub, or how you AI processing? Is it on site, or how does that work? A server in the hospital, or
Currently run on Amazon Web Services. So that would be the preferred method. If we have a customer who really wants to run it on their own cloud provider, their own server, probably do it.
Are you doing like model fine tuning for training your own models models from scratch to pull it through over time, or are you using like some third-party service? Like,
Yeah, we do a mix of everything. So we have some models that are just off the shelf, we have some models that are fine-tuned, we have some models that are totally proprietary, other ones that are open source.
so you do have some data that's kind of like proprietary that you're keeping for your own training.
Yeah, actually, most of the data that we're collecting is, to my knowledge, unique in the world. I don't think there are any health systems. There are some insurance companies who might have it, but most of the data we're collecting is actually pretty. Yeah, we're excited. There's actually a lot of potential clinical use cases for the data too, and that's really what we're excited about, is being able to actually help improve patient care, help doctors define their diagnosis. General notes, how does it work though? There's a microphone in the office or in the room. And then I don't know, I'm just imagining though, like if the doctor asks the patient to raise their arm, if they want to check if their shoulders are sore, how would it know that it wouldn't really. Like for certain physical exams, you're just going to be able to know it's 100% accurate. Which physical exam is done. But there is a precedent for that sometimes without medical scribes, but we don't know that. But in general, then, so how does it work? How would it be different than, you know, if you just have the phone transcribe the words that you say? How would it be different? So the difference is, in our case, first of all, we're delivering like a written note, which is what the insurance company wants. So it would be kind of like a memo format. The data it's going to it. And the other thing is that we're actually capturing the context and medical information in the conversation. And we do actually transcribe it to the transcription part of our pipeline, but we're kind of doing additional analysis on top of it. So is it sort of analyzing all of the information that appears and converts it into the data that or sort of needs? Yeah. That format. Any other questions?
Cool. All right. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, sorry to keep everyone. Usually we try to end promptly at 8:30, but we had a late start. So thank you guys online. Thanks, Shel and Rick and Priya. All right, and thank the audience here for coming. You guys see yourself there. And that's a wrap. Thank you, guys.